happened. I don't know what session we're on. I've lost track at this point.
Thank you.
But I do want to give some thank yous and shout outs. So definitely a big thank you to everyone in our community who came out and voted on the budget on Tuesday. We were really happy to see our budget pass and very hopeful that that will help to support our salary discussions, because now that we have a state finalized budget and finalized school district budget, we're in a good place. And I just want to acknowledge and give a shout out to all of the ITA members who held our walk-in pep rallies this morning, this afternoon. Some of you were out there in the rain, cold, and gloom very early this morning. So we really appreciate everybody who got out and helped make negotiations visible. So anyone?
Yeah, also an appreciation for the folks who continue to engage in this process and others. There've been dozens of hours committed to this, and folks still come in person. The blue looks great. Folks are engaging online, real time, and I'm learning that folks are watching at 1.8 speed after the fact. So just thank you. This is not an easy thing to keep up with, and I've been surprised pleasantly how many people are doing so. I appreciate y'all.
I did not write down who our note runners are. So note runners, can you please wave your hands? Cool. So we've got Julie and Gina up there who are running notes down to David. If you have notes that need to be passed, and if you have a note and you put your name on it so we know who wrote it and who it's going to, that would be helpful.
Where's Jacob? Is Jacob here?
Jacob is here.
I just got connected.
So actually, here's what, so for people who don't know, Jacob's job, he has a live Google Doc version of our current contract. And every time we reach a tentative agreement, he is transferring that language over into that document and bookmarking it, so that when we do reach an overall comprehensive tentative agreement, we already have all of the work of putting it in done. So things are happening, and he's a little bit of a hero.
A Trader Joe's bill, man, every time you.
And our note takers for today, I know Gretchen is on notes, and I know that who else is helping Gretchen? We've got Molly and Jen helping Gretchen. Aurora is chaperoning an LACS trip, and we are hoping that we can get anywhere near close to the quality that she brings to that job, because she's pretty phenomenal at it. And she's missed, but she'll be back and she's having a great time. So on our agenda, the whole first page, these are all tabled proposals. Some of them we have talked about before and are still undergoing a bit of revision. Some of them we have not talked about yet because they're all money items that we want to talk about salary and resolve that first. So we're going to switch ourselves. We have withdrawn no new proposals, and as I last checked, no new withdrawals from you all either, right?
No.
Okay, so moving on to page 2, we are going to start. I brought my crack salary team back up to talk about salary. You will notice we have a version 4 salary proposal, so a new version of this proposal. Chris and Brian will tell you a little bit more about it, but I only included version 4 since we have the other ones in previous packets. And this version 4 proposal is responsive to the conversation that we had last time we were here about how to reconcile and adjust for incomplete years of prior service. So I worked that into the how to implement part of the proposal. And then Brian reworked some salary grids representative of the data that you gave us. So I'm going to let these fine gentlemen take it away.
Yeah, thank you for providing updated data. We appreciate that. We spent some time with it this week. We verified with individual members in person as often as we could. We see some issues still. There are something like 20 members that we see missing. There's some other issue, but in general,
be missing salaries, no salary information for those 20 members.
Yeah, in general, though, we're happy to have hopefully a shared data set. I guess more than anything, we hope that can move our discussion forward. And we agree that this is the data, and we're willing to do that, and hopefully be on the same page. And I think that will move us forward. The other thing I'd say about the data in general, it confirmed most of what we thought from the data we previously had. So we continue to have the same concerns, especially about our members being leapfrogged in the hundreds. We've had some philosophical debate about what leapfrogging means. Our intention today is to maybe not get in the weeds on that. But we can revisit it if that's an important philosophical conversation. We have some slides and whatnot, but for today, we would just say the data confirms most of our working assumptions. We're still quite concerned about the leapfrogging, as there are members that I talked to this week. And we have our proposal is even more essential, right? For us, the solution has to be step and lane. There's no doubt about that. We hope that the district can agree that step and lane is the only viable solution when looking at this data as soon as possible. And we've also brought a new salary proposal today that we hope will be palatable, and we believe we've made some compromise. We brought our number down. We still think can make meaningful progress for our members in terms of salary equity. So our hope is to present that proposal today. And perhaps leave it at that, or get into the weeds more if you want as well. We can go into details as well.
You say presented, are you presenting some slides? We've gone through it, we've read
You
it.
have it written.
No need for us
Perfect.
to
Yeah.
reiterate it.
Exactly. Our goal is not to revisit unless necessary.
Maybe a couple of clarifying questions from me, and then we can determine some next steps, which may be our next meeting. One, our salary proposal that's currently on the table, and I know that we may not want to use the word rejection, but I need to get some sense from y'all about before we withdraw it, where are y'all with that one? Are you just not interested in entertaining the salary proposal we had on the last time?
The salary proposal that you presented last time, because it is not a step and lane, we cannot accept it.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear first. So we've went through this one, and there are the weeds, and then there's the same field. The field we're operating on, I think is something we need to talk about first before getting into the weeds from my perspective. And when I say field, I'm talking about the difference between 4.6% and 7%. And our proposal had 2 years, and yours now has 4. So I just want to clarify that we're talking about the same field, or the differences in between two fields, because that's something I would need to go talk to the board about, because that's as I've said since the very first session, very first conversation. For me, it's been about a total dollar amount before I can get into the weeds. I want to make sure we're on the same field.
And we're probably even closer in the field than that. I know one of the proposals that you brought was 5%, right? It was the 4 plus the 1.
Yes.
Plus the 1 the next year. So it's really a 5 to a 7% for those two numbers.
No, that 4 plus the 1 was the 4 plus 1, and that was the additional time onto this school day.
Right. So if the field is the pot of money, we're talking about a 5 to a 7.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Which is significant, just for the record.
Brian, can you also explain the impact of 7% over 4 to solving the problem, and why we went with 4 as opposed to 3 or 2?
Yeah. Yep. So we originally came with an 8, and the numbers we had showed that to get ICSD mid-career veteran salaries competitive, we would need that much. So I think I'm answering your question, Catherine. To 7 over 4, it's not 8, but it's still a move in that direction. To be honest, we're not where I think we need to be after 4 years, but that's part of the compromise we're talking about.
Okay.
And I would also clarify, we are definitely interested in something longer than 2 years. 2 years, we'd be negotiating again next year. Especially as we lower our overall salary ask, spreading it over years gives us more chance to achieve equity as well. So we hope for a 3-year agreement minimum. You guys, I think at one point threw out 4, which is where we pulled the number.
No, we've all been, the pros and cons to all.
Yeah.
And I think we could,
A 4 would be our preference. We would likely be okay with a 3-year agreement if the district prefers, and we're not interested in a 2-year.
yeah, 4-year was much nicer in February than it is now with the fiscal instability our country and district is. I think we all recognize that. And I still would wish to entertain a 4-year commitment. And also recognizing the difference between what I'm hearing is a 7 and at most a 5 for us. If you were to assume a 4.6 for 4 years, we're talking $4 or $5 million more in a commitment And I think we've shown in previous sessions, the data reveals that we're going to be dipping significantly into fund balances, reserves, and potential staffing reductions if we project out that far beyond the 4.6 increases we've already put on the table. Just to make, as we talk about data, I want to make sure we're all having the same conversation, because I see this as a collaboration, not us and them. I think the ways in which we exchange data is very transparent and very clear. We did have a budget pass this week that was a 3.69% increase year to year. But the percentages and the dollars are there. How we use those and how we plan for those over 2 versus 4 is something we all got to grapple with. And there are risks associated with that, and things are changing daily. But I just want to make sure we're on the same. At some point, we got to get on the same field, y'all, if we're going to get an agreement.
I hear,
right now,
I hear that.
A 7 and a 5 is still significant, because that's about $1.2 million each year. And if you do an additional 1.1 times 4, we're talking $4.5–5 million. That's significant. And right now, I need to talk to some other folks outside of this table before we can even entertain something like. And the step lane is significant too. We've talked about that, particularly with no concessions. A step lane is guaranteeing, looking at your proposal, guaranteeing those kind of increases in perpetuity, if that's the word I can use.
Yeah.
So it's all things we need to talk about.
Yeah, so I think that we still remain in the same place, that the step and lane is critically important. That the percentage has we've always said the step and lane is the most important. The percentage is something that's obviously negotiable. And if you look on the first page of the agenda, I did gloss over it, but those 17 tabled items are all, we recognize that those 17 tabled items all come from the same pot as the step and lane. So commitment to the step and lane at the percentage that we eventually land on will dictate how many of those other items are still high priority once we've established
And
that.
maybe that's my third question. I did have a third one. Again, I think I've shared before, I grew up on a step and lane system in another state, and I loved it, but other folks didn't like it. One of the things I loved until I realized what it really meant for us was the compounding nature of the lane system. I was one who early on did a lot of graduate work and had a significant number of hours. And that dollar amount that was allocated towards my graduate increments always stayed the same. Whereas I think we have a system right now, the sooner you get those graduate increments, you get the increases and that compounds. That's just different. All right. And we'll get your comments, but we're getting rather technical now. But the ways in which we have it set up right now, the sooner you get the graduate increments, the sooner you move across the lane, the more money you have overall over time.
So
I didn't know that as a younger teacher, but other folks did in my school district, and they were advocating for us to move away from step lane because of that fact. So I just want to make sure we all are talking about the same thing here.
Yeah, so we are very aware of that. Our members understand that. We've had extensive conversations about that. We fundamentally believe that it should not matter when you get your credits, that someone with the same amount of years and the same amount of credits should make the same salary, similar to the way our students in our classrooms learn at different paces. People's lives set you up in different ways to be able to take advantage of professional learning in different ways.
Okay.
If you're somebody who, it takes a while to be able to afford to get graduate credits because you're just starting out and you're struggling financially, that shouldn't be a detriment to whether or not you can earn the same as a colleague later on. If you choose to have a family and focus on having a family and raising young children, and then once your kids get a little bit older and more stable, you start doing more professional development, that shouldn't be a detriment. On the other side, my personal story, I got the message loud and clear really early, was in a position where I came in with 45 credits already for my graduate program because I started with a master's degree, did a whole bunch of in-service credit and maxed myself out by year 10. Now anyone who knows me knows that I am just kind of intrinsically a lifelong learner. But my desire to do professional development significantly decreased, and I significantly slowed down the pace of my professional learning once I had maxed out. Because at that point, it's the intrinsic motivation, it's maybe the hourly rate, but I wasn't doing
Mhm.
as much going above and beyond. I think that we're seeing now, Nancy's one of the people who's in this category of, can you talk a little bit about your professional training in reading at the beginning of your career versus now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really salient to this moment we're in with literacy in elementary, which is that, many people were trained with a whole language approaches that ICSD has recently embraced the science of reading and realized that we were actually not serving children old methods of literacy training. So you could look at that training and say, we actually need to update now. So why, the question for me is, why is that early learning more valuable dollar-wise than something more current?
I'm not saying it's more valuable.
Yeah,
let me be
we
clear.
feel the same way about
Yeah.
like PD that used to be offered, special education PD in like 2005, or equity learning in 2005 looks very different than it does today. And we actually want to encourage our members to continuously develop.
I was looking at my own professional development catalog earlier today. I received in-service credits for such hot topics as how to burn a CD and organizing files on your H drive. We no longer use H
Just
drives
CD.
and we no longer use CDs. So a good argument for why continued professional development should be incentivized.
I'm thinking about burning CDs. All right, then my last question. Thank you all for clarifying. That's going to be something I will have to answer to others. As we think about that 7% overall pot of money, it doesn't look like there's an equal distribution across the steps. And at one point we were having conversations about equity versus equality. So help me with how you distributed the 7, because it looks like some people are getting much more than 7 and some are getting far less.
Yeah, that's been the case with all of the models. And that's the idea of the step and lane is to fix some of the problems that we're having, to fix the teacher retention crisis. So if I'm making tens of $1,000s or $10,000 less than my peer who has the same years of experience, same credits, et cetera, in moving people to the step and lane, as we've talked about over the weeks, that means certain people right now are going to get a large bump. And certain people right now would get just a standard raise. After we transition people onto the grid, people would then move equally. So it's not going to be this widespread forever. It would be over the 4 years as we're building. And in the first year, it would be the wildest spread. As we got to the second year, things would the chaos would calm down. And as we got into year 4, many people would be on the grid, getting the grid raise. That spread wouldn't have a huge band to it.
Okay. Thank you all. My questions have been answered. Right now, there's, from my perspective and what I'm hearing, there's one proposal on the table, and that's this one. So we will talk more and then come back with some acceptance or counters or where we're going to go next. And that will be at our next session.
Okay. So we should just move on in our agenda.
I would
right?
suggest so, unless there are other
Great.
questions from y'all presentation.
You two want to retreat?
You were good at it.
Okay. I mean, it's fun up here.
Thank you all for coming back. I forgot what it was like to negotiate without Chris at the table. We've been doing this for years now.
Okay, hold on, I'm getting myself confused here in my. Okay, so our next proposal coming back to the common planning time for inclusion assignments. We're on page 11 and it goes on to page 12. What you'll see here is the proposal that we were talking about last time. Mary made some revisions, those are in red. And then I read through and just made, one was a wording and one was just a minor adjustment, and that is included. But if you've read through the blue, we can talk about it. We are fine with all of the changes in red.
And I am fine with all the changes in blue.
So then we have, Jake, we have tentative agreement on proposal 32.
Thank you.
Bill.
And
Thank you.
proposal 32, because we didn't introduce it, we have tentative agreement on establishing common planning time for inclusion assignments. Which makes a lot of people really happy. Thank you, thank you.
At this time, all students who are not supervised activities and I need to.
Start talking, Bob. Every time you talking when they come on, just say something.
No student should be inside any building or the class after 4:40. If you're taking a late bus, please have your bus pass ready, with the address on it, and report to the bus attendant.
Okay, so moving on, proposal 56, protections against AI outsourcing on page 13. Reminder, we are already at agreement on A and B. We have talked a bit about the sentence, both the district and the association highly value the benefits of human teachers and human connection in the classroom, but also understand that ever-evolving technology has a place in education. So we are standing firm. We heard at the board meeting last week when an expert showed up on the field, because one of the things was nobody here is an expert, but we've had some experts weigh in since then. We heard loud and clear that we are in a mutual place that we do not currently want to or plan to replace teachers. And our members say trust but codify. So that is it. We did that. Those 5 words are very important.
Yeah, I'm made quite a few calls on this topic to policymakers because what we're doing right now is working on policy. And I think one of the hesitations I have was just around putting language into a policy prematurely. And there are federal commissions that have been convened to talk about this issue and come up with policy language and suggestions for workplaces. There's a state group that's going to start, and I would be suggesting that we start something locally as well. I am still hesitant about putting any language and getting out in front of our federal, state, and even our board policy in contract language. And that's what we'll be doing on this topic. That's why, yeah, I know we're in different places on that one, but I also know that even with cell phone bans and policy, how many years did we talk about cell phones and what that language would look like in policy? And to have been given policy language from our state most recently, that's now going to require us to talk about that at the local level with our board that will now be policy here locally. This, from my perspective, is no different. But again, I don't need to restate how I feel about humans. We've been spending hundreds of hours into talking about humans. And I'm also uniquely positioned to talk about policy language for this organization. And I am being absolutely clear, it's too premature to talk about policy language on this topic, just like it would have been to put policy language in our contract around cell phones 6 years ago when we did this. But I hear you.
Yep.
And I will be open with everything else except for C.
Yep, I am going to remind you of a few things. One, I don't know if you saw the Ithaca City Mayor turns out an expert in both AI and policy and the intersection of politics. And he reminded us that we create laws, we determine policies, we create language for the times we're in, not for unknown futures. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind. And then also today, as I was researching and learning and reading about the big, beautiful bill that has passed, in the big, beautiful bill, there is a 10-year barring of all government oversight into AI, which then made me go, And I went and I pulled out my binder of Project 2025. And it turns out that barring any regulation around AI is a Project 2025 priority. So I am just going to put, because yes, it is policy, it is setting the tone for everything. I think it's just really important to also understand in a heavily it is a heavily politicized issue. And I think it's just important to acknowledge what side of politics the leaving it alone and seeing what happens lands on, and that is on the Project 2025 side. So I'm going to let you think about that. We are not pulling this from the table. Those 5 words are critically important to our members.
Quick question, the mayor who have that expertise in both places,
Mhm.
what does the policy language say in their collective bargaining agreement?
I can reach
Find
out
that
and
out.
find out. Yeah,
If they're giving advice without talking to me, I would love to know what they have in their policies, because I would be open to seeing it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he can pick up the phone, she can pick up the
Yeah.
phone and call and give me advice.
yeah. Tammy is reminding me that the work that policymakers in the city do is very different than the work that we do in
I-
classrooms too. But
Trust me, I know, but he's
But
giving you
I'm
advice.
I am going to ask my note takers in the to-do list section to please give me a to-do list item to reach out to the mayor to get an answer to that question. Okay,
Your city manager just recently organized your. Etc.
okay. So moving on. We are going to skip the scheduling of teacher librarians because Meg is not here yet. But moving on, we have proposal 46, which is around secondary department leadership, which is on page 17 in our packets. So we talked last time about leadership opportunities for our teachers. We listened really closely and heard some of the, the hard piece, especially for our elementary colleagues who could so deeply benefit from the many benefits that having some leadership opportunities provide, and also hearing the piece about, what is the future of elementary schools going to look like in terms of getting back that RFP, looking at our data study. We had some real hard conversations. This was a very, very hard one for our team. We have revised. The revisions do reflect that discussion. We have removed the entire piece about elementary leadership. Sadly, we're hoping that we can work together over the length of this CBA to be ready when we come back to the table to have a real conversation about how do we create similar opportunities for our elementary colleagues. But right now, this is making some somewhat minor changes and adding some language, because what we find is when you have procedures that are held over here and voting procedures that are in bylaws and then duties that are in contracts, we kind of wanted to bring everything into one place to make it a little bit more clear. So this is really just focusing on secondary department leaders, how we elect them, what they are responsible for, and then a little bit around release, but none of the release times have changed.
I love how you said somewhat minor, and there's a lot of blue ones here, so give me your.
So we don't have all the pieces about the elections is all language from our bylaws that we've brought over. So it's not currently in the contract, but it currently exists in the way, because we run the election.
Right.
So this is just putting how we run the election into the contract, because most people don't go to our bylaws when they want to know how a thing works.
This is a significant revision from my perspective, and I can understand and appreciate the hard conversations you all had about this one. Can you give us some time to talk to our secondary administrators about the implications and implementation?
Yeah,
Well, I read it yesterday. Hearing you talk about it now, we need some more time from my perspective, Mary. I don't know about you, but I think we need to run this by some more folks.
yeah.
You've had the time to talk.
Do you have questions? Moving on to page 19, Curriculum night expectations. This is just a reflection of the discussion that we had last time we were at the table.
Thank you for memorializing, codifying, my wish, I think it was your wish as well, that if an educator child is having a curriculum night, they, from my perspective, are expected to be at that and not at one for their respective ability. Which, I don't know why I thought about this today, but maybe we need to say it in the city school district. I wouldn't be able to confirm, or I mean, I guess I could just believe folks, but if there's a curriculum night in South Center,
I don't think that that's hard to confirm.
yeah. I mean, I guess, let's clarify, is it any curriculum night anywhere, or we talking about it's curriculum nights in Ithaca? That's what I would, and I want your members to be clear about that one. And I haven't even talked to my team about this, I read it again before I came over.
Yeah.
And I'd be open to it. I just want to make sure we say it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so this was your suggestion. It was brought to honor the role of parenting.
Yeah.
And we know that many of our teachers cannot afford to live in this district. So we do have many, and especially our younger members who are more likely to have school-age children, where those curriculum nights, especially elementary school curriculum nights, are so important. I think that it is essential, if we're really doing this in the spirit of honoring parents, that it needs to be, we can ask for verification. that
And let's
they-
call it something different. Is everyone, again, I know I've lived here 15 years, but curriculum night was new. It was parent teacher
Mhm.
conference, or it was an open house. So just the language can be confusing.
What if we said at the same time as their own child's curriculum night or other such event?
Cool.
Is that-
Makes sense to me.
Okay,
I apologize, but I thank you for reminding me. It was my suggestion, and I'm not questioning. I'm negotiating this myself, but I can anticipate that would be a question. And
Yeah,
thank you
no,
for
that's-
sharing, because initially I'm thinking just in the Ithaca City School District, and thanks for the reminder that curriculum night could be somewhere else.
Yeah.
But they may not call it.
no, I think that's great. So we'll add or other such event after curriculum night and before the teacher will be. Are we in agreement?
I know Bob's not looking at me because he can see all the hole in this, but you good with it, Bob? All right.
You're good.
Ding, Jake, we really do need to get a bell.
I have several.
Of course you have several. Or we could get a 30-second dance party.
I have one of those. Just transfer around my room.
Okay, let's see. What? I'm sorry.
You know,
Did I skip one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I did not put the page of the proposal around adding domestic partners to health insurance in here because it was one sentence long. And it is just to extend health insurance to domestic partners. And I brought back, we talked and you were gonna do some research, you were gonna talk to your legal team. We've also done some extensive research, so how do you want to proceed?
Why don't we, I've not heard back from our legal on this, so if you want to
Share?
share, that's fine, and we can send it up to our legal too, and then, okay.
Okay,
Sure.
so I will walk you through kind of the research that we did. So I started by looking into one of the things that I questioned last time was whether the Equal Rights Amendment in New York State would be a guide in this particularly. So I actually found the statement that came with the sponsor memo for the Equal Rights Amendment that stated the purpose of the amendment. And the pieces that are important here are that amendment to the state constitution was brought in the spirit that all New Yorkers deserve a constitution that recognizes that every person is entitled to equal rights and justice under the law, regardless of who they are, whom they love, or what their families look like. And then it goes on to say that we don't have this. So this is necessary to realize the promise of legal equality and justice for all New Yorkers, and to create clear ways to recognize the interconnected nature of discrimination. Which I think it's really important that we recognize that if we were to recognize domestic partnerships, we can end a practice that perpetuates marriage supremacy, which is based kind of on a patriarchal Judeo-Christian dominant cultural norm. So looking at that, recognizing that there is some discrimination when we're making policies based in those areas. And really, we were looking at, in bringing this forward, to provide a better chance of equal rights and justice for folks with disabilities. So I'll get into that in a few minutes, in a moment, because Molly did some great research on there. But I also started taking a look at where are our other employers in the area on this issue. So I started by looking at the top 5 employers in Tompkins County. I found that Cornell offers health insurance to domestic partners. Cayuga Medical offers health insurance to domestic partners. Ithaca College offers health insurance to domestic partners provided that they are same-sex couples. ICSD has contract language restricting domestic partners in our contract. Borg Warner offers domestic partner health insurance. So of the top 5 employers in the county, we are the only ones who are not offering that at this time. I went into the City of Ithaca contracts. The City of Ithaca administrative personnel contract offers domestic partner health insurance. The City of Ithaca Police offer domestic partner health insurance. The City of Ithaca firefighters offer domestic partnership insurance. And then I went to some neighboring school districts. Cortland, yes, for same-sex couples. Dryden, yes. Teaburg, yes, for same-sex couples. Broome Community College, yes. Now, this is not a comprehensive list, but it shows a trend. And then Molly did some excellent research on marriage penalties for folks with disabilities. Molly, do you want to come talk, or do you want me to just present? Okay. Here you go.
I've got your copy. Here you are.
Okay. Hi. So I think we got this idea of the marriage penalties and its impact on healthcare from Erin Croyle, and how she has addressed how it could affect people who receive SSI or Social Security income. So I just did like a research paper on this, but I'll try to summarize. So like, who qualifies for SSI? People who are over 65 or people who have a disability and also meet other requirements. So I'm just going to skip through and see like what's the important piece to share. So it also looks at people who have like limited income, limited resources, etc. And there's lots of ways that the SSI department will look into resources and income. And for somebody who is single, of course, it's just looking at their own personal income. But once somebody gets married, it will then look at their spouse's income and resources and put that as a piece into like how much SSI that they qualify for, or even if they still qualify for it. So many couples, if a person has a disability where they receive SSI, might not get married because it will impact their ability to receive those benefits. Let me skip to like the statistics. So let's see what I found. This came from, doesn't matter. It came from a resource, I swear. But
We have like 6 of them down at the bottom.
bring it back to the bathroom just in case it came up. I'm a little like
Take a
Um,
breath, you got this.
So that in general, in the United States, about 57% of people are married over the age of 18, 57% compared to 24% of people who are SSI recipients. And one could imagine that possibly the reason why that number is less than half of the, like, of just other adults is maybe because people aren't getting married as often because of how it could impact their access to those benefits. And another study showed that between 2009, 2019, 593,000 Americans with disabilities got married, but during that period of time, about twice as many of adults with disabilities got divorced. I don't think that people with disabilities are innately more likely to get divorced for any reason. I would have to imagine it's because many of them are realizing that being married is impacting their access to these benefits. So, many people in the disability community refer to this as the marriage penalty, and really just kind of equate this to the history of ways that people with disabilities have been marginalized in the United States historically, and how even though, you know, now compared to 50 years ago, 100 years ago, there's a lot more opportunities that like people in this community have, that there's still ways that they are being punished, such as by not being able to receive these benefits. So I think that kind of the direction we were going with this is that if we can offer health insurance to people who are in a domestic partnership, because access to Medicare, this Medicare for people, like the health benefits that you get through Medicare through our insurance that we have, it's much different, right? Like you don't have access to as many providers. There's limitations on like what types of treatments you can get. And with this new bill that was passed, that might even be more limited than it was yesterday. So if we're able to offer this extension to people, then this would help people who are in a domestic partnership due to these reasons.
Mayor. Ironically, I've had to educate myself on this topic in ways that I would have never imagined because it has impacted my family. And I have had to navigate the controversies and the complexities and the difficulties around making this very hard decision. So, as a person who now knows more than I thought I ever would about this topic, I would love to support it. And through my research, I've never been able to uncover or quantify how much it costs an organization, and particularly when looking at the range of a number of employees in the organization. So thank you for quoting the different organizations who offer this. Can we together work to, I mean, those are research and data-driven organizations who have entire departments to analyze numbers. Maybe we start there and ask how much do they anticipate this adding to their costs if offering this? If it was free, I think we would already be ringing the bell. But I think it would be irresponsible for me to entertain this and to take it to our board and our community without putting some type of figures and a range on how much it would cost.
I hear that, and it leads me down the road of, if we assumed that every one of our employees were to be able to get married, what would be the economic impact of that on our health insurance, right? Like it's what we're asking for is that people can have similar relationships just with different legal distinctions in terms of the health insurance. So it's not so I welcome you reaching out to Cornell
I
and
think
Borg Warner.
it's a
and
complex
to
question.
find out. But I think people could get married.
My words are coming from curiosity and not judgment. Let me be absolutely clear.
Yeah.
Because I know exactly where I am on this issue. And I say I'm uniquely positioned. I feel like everybody's staring at me at times, but I'm the one who has the answer to that question that I could not find when I looked for the answer. I could not find the answer. But someone's gonna ask me for that number and to quantify it. Irrespective of my feelings, they may have some judgment and feelings associated with it, and I need to have an answer. And particularly because I am in favor of it and because of my personal connection to this issue, I better be tight. Bob, anything you want to add, questions on this one? This is a complex one, as we know.
I don't have any questions right now, Doc. Thank you.
So can we talk about, can you reach out, get the
Yeah, I
information
think
that you need and
we're
we'll
gonna
talk about it
spend some
next time?
time, if you come across something, let me know, but we're gonna spend some time trying to quantify it or coming up with an algorithm to figure out what number we would assign to it. But I think if we can be in agreement that this would not come at no cost.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, I see it as having the same cost as what we already have.
This is in addition to what we already have.
No, because nobody is going to enter a domestic partnership and then also enter a marriage. So we're never going to have someone who is not currently married become both married and in a domestic partnership. Right? So can I call you in here?
Yes.
If David were to get married tomorrow and put his partner on our health insurance, that would be the same cost as if David were to enter a legal domestic partnership tomorrow and put his partner on our health insurance. He can't do it twice because you are either entering the domestic
But
partnership or entering
he
the
can
marriage.
do it he can do it in the first example under the current contract. This would
Yes.
expand the universe of people that would be able to enter into.
But
the system.
every one of those people could get married.
But the premise of the whole thing is they won't. And so the actuarial value of the healthcare program will then be added to by the increased number of people who can access it, who otherwise wouldn't access it because they wouldn't be getting married.
We're increasingly married the denominator, right? Yeah, there's some data. Yeah, we're increasing the number of folks on our healthcare plan, which increase our cost. I hate to.
No, I know. I'm viewing it more as the potential is always there anyway. And I understand that like there are actuarials who do this kind of stuff. You're going to consult with some actuarials and some human resources departments. I'm going to put out a pulse survey to find out how many people are actually in a legal domestic partnership because I suspect that it's very few. So I don't think that it's going to be hugely significant amongst our membership. Yet as unionists, a harm to one is a harm to all. So if there is even one person who is denied access to healthcare that could really benefit and support their family, I don't need an actuarial to tell me whether or not that is something that I'm going to fight for. But I understand and respect that you have a different role and a different commitment to taxpayer funds than we do.
That's why I'm
So
talking.
do the due diligence to be able to come back with it and we'll talk about it at our next session.
No doubt.
Okay. That brings us to has Meg gotten here yet?
Nathan should be here around 6 o'clock.
Around 6 o'clock?
Yep. Right now we are at 5 o'clock.
Okay. Do you want to start a brand new topic that we have yet to talk about? It is the last brand new topic that we plan to bring until we've resolved salary.
Cool.
Okay. Molly, come on back down. And for this one, we do actually have a presentation because it is a pretty huge and important topic that we've had a team working on for a long time. And I feel sad that Aurora is not here because this has been Aurora's special project and she just happens to not be here tonight. So if you give us a minute, I don't think I linked it in the agenda.
It's in this packet. Here, do you want mine, Molly?
But this is paper.
Oh, here, you can have mine.
He's putting the slides up.
Oh, I got the sign.
Oh, okay.
No, we just need to get this slide.
In front of the room. Hold this like Vanna White.
So we are working on getting up our slides, but we have a proposal that is looking at the way we have contract language around leaves of absence and specifically looking at the way that we support new parents in family leave. So looking at the entire experience from deciding you want to try to have a child to, you know, the experience of the first year of a child.
And I think Catherine already shared this, while it's helping Brian, that, Aurora and I put the slideshow together, with some help from other folks. And we keep joking, it's like a pre-baby baby, but for me, it's truly rooted in like my intense anxiety over being able to have a child with the time frame that we're working with. And I will say that that anxiety was kind of, if anything, confirmed by the stories that I heard and got from other members that we work with, which will be shared in here. But without further ado, this is us talking about family leave. Okay. So our job as educators. Our job as educators is to help raise the children of this community.
Can
And
you see slides on your screens?
No.
We can't. You could. It's up there, but.
oh. Well, it's not on the.
It's not on our
screen.
iPads, Brian.
It's not coming through on Zoom.
No,
Not
not
yet.
on here.
No.
This is the agenda. Oh, this is the notice.
Like this. Yeah. Yeah, seriously. Back people. Something's here, and worst case scenario, it's up here, you can get like copies of the printed version.
But we only have like 3 copies.
So we just need Mary and Dr. Brown to have one, because the other folks can see it,
That's true. Oh, that's.
right? So here, we've got our 10 copies.
I can also move. I can also have people
I would love to
sit.
get up.
What? We can move. too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. Here,
There.
it might be coming. This is an exciting version, but we can also.
Top
This
secret.
is us.
That's written.
That we don't have a copy of them. We want to go over their talkers or whatever you like. I almost died. Sorry, we got. I think that was the closest we were almost.
Oh, there we go.
Until I'm a lot of noise.
Look. It's just like a ball out of
Okay, we're good now.
Oh, and we have it here and here.
There we go.
Yeah, we talked about it in the Oh, there now, it's everywhere.
Okay, without further ado, our job as educators is to help raise the children of this community. And we'd also just like to be able to do the same for our own children. Hit it. Okay. So how important is supportive parental leave to retaining teachers? So more than 1 in 3 teachers who leave the career, cite personal reasons, including pregnancy and childcare, as an extremely or very important in their decision. So, employers offering 12 weeks of parental leave see a 70% reduction in turnover among working moms.
And those are both national statistics. So I found the statistics.
All right, and this is just, you know, from our own membership, 95% of our ITA members support enhancing parental leave, the parental leave language. So this is an issue that is really important to our, it's as important to our members as salary. So I won't read through all the contract language, but just to simplify it, that currently a teacher who bears a child uses 30 personal sick illness family days or 6 weeks for the birth of a child. Additional time will be unpaid unless a medical doctor, I just said I wouldn't read through it and I'm reading through it.
Well, it's not the actual contract language, it is the summary.
It is
so.
summary. Thank you. Okay, so that additional time that teachers would like to take would need to be unpaid unless a medical doctor indicates that the teacher has a continuing disability and is unable to work. For teachers who adopt children, they can use up to 30 accumulated personal illness family days. And a teacher whose partner bears a child can have 15 days. And in addition, teachers can take up to 2 years of unpaid child care leave. So when we all met to talk about it, we kind of broke this down into 3 important times that to support new caregivers that we really wanted to focus on. And that's prenatal care, postpartum, or otherwise known as the 4th trimester, and just the first year of a baby's life in general. All right, so we'll start with prenatal care. So the problem that we're trying to solve, healthy pregnancies require a lot of prenatal care appointments, around 15 doctor visits for what are like normal healthy pregnancies. Anybody going through fertility treatments, that's even more time consuming. The average time spent at appointments while undergoing IVF is about 83 hours annually. Which doesn't account for travel to places like Syracuse or Rochester where members would need to go in order to get those services. So since ITA members rely on their own accumulated sick days to cover their parental leave, they're then hesitant to use their sick days for these prenatal appointments. On January 1st, 2025, New York became the first state in the nation to offer paid time off for prenatal care or other medical care related to pregnancy. But unfortunately, this policy is only required for private employers. So under this policy, people who are pregnant are able to receive an additional 20 hours of paid sick leave for that prenatal care without putting their employment at risk. So we're just thinking like, well, why shouldn't we also follow suit with that? So here's just some testimonies that Aurora, Catherine, and I, and we just gathered from members about their prenatal care. So the first is from somebody on their IVF journey who had 70 sick days and then only had 36.5 left when their twins were born. And even with the additional days that they got in the new school year, by the end of maternity leave, they were then out of sick days. Another one of somebody who traveled to Syracuse weekly for medical care in February through June, leaving home around 5 a.m. to be back in work in time to start their workday at a middle school to avoid using their sick days. Somebody else shared that the only OB/GYN office in Ithaca offers appointments only until 3 p.m. and no weekend appointments. So it makes it really difficult to get that care while teaching full time. And at the same time, they were using their sick time for appointments, feeling anxious, knowing I might need that time later to be with my baby. Another one, my IVF appointments were weekly, so I used up a lot of my sick days before I even got to my maternity leave. And since I had a C-section, those are more days I needed to use that also came out of my sick days. So here's the solution that we're proposing for these prenatal care days. So what we wrote is that teachers who notify the district that they're pregnant or receiving fertility care in hopes of becoming pregnant will receive 6 additional prenatal care days. And that these will not accumulate and must be used within 365 days of the date that they are granted. Okay, the next is postpartum in the 4th trimester. So pediatrician Dr. Harvey Karp coined the term the 4th trimester, stating that babies aren't like horses. They can't run the first day of life. And so we need to recognize that they're evicted from the womb 3 months before they're actually ready for the world. Okay, so this first part is kind of just about the health of the baby. So the 12 weeks following birth are a critical time in the baby's development. In the first 3 months of life, newborn babies require significant round-the-clock care to thrive. The attachment bond between parents and their child has an important function for the child's cognitive, physical, and emotional development. While some parents experience immediate emotional connection, others may need more time to establish a bond, and for some parents, it takes several months to establish that bond. Okay, and this next part is the health of the parents. So recovery from pregnancy and childbirth often takes longer than the 6 to 8 weeks. And even after physical recovery, 6 to 8 weeks is not enough time to develop sleep and feeding routines for babies and allow for new parents to sleep well at night. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists recommends that birthing parents have ongoing care starting at 3 weeks after delivery. However, that same organization also reports that only 40% of parents attend their postpartum follow-up visits. And these follow-up visits are really important. 1 in 5 parents, birth-giving parents, struggle with postpartum mental health, which can be addressed at these visits. In addition, 1/3 of maternal-related deaths occur between 1 week to 1 year after delivery. And what I found is that most of the time those deaths could be preventable with that ongoing care and understanding risks and warning signs that could lead to postpartum maternal related deaths. So here's some more testimonials from members. So first, I originally planned to take off the rest of the school year. After my 6 weeks were up, my principal contacted me throughout this period saying your class needs you and they're falling apart without you. And because of this, I ended up returning before I was ready. Since 6 weeks was not long enough for me to heal physically or bond with my baby, I was forced to take a leave of absence for the rest of the year rather than extending my leave to an appropriate amount of time. Understanding how much I would need to pay out of pocket to maintain health insurance during my leave took days of sitting with the ITA president, writing emails, calling HR and BOCES payroll so I could financially plan ahead. Although we now have dedicated space and time for expressing milk, having to pump and feed my baby at 6 weeks caused me a lot of stress, which then caused my supply to quickly decrease. Frequent bottles made my babies resistant to nursing, which was really hard for me emotionally. So here's the solution that we're proposing. Parental leave for birth-giving parents. A teacher who bears a child can use up to 60 accumulated sick days for pregnancy-related disability within the 12 weeks immediately following giving birth. Additional leave time after those 12 weeks will be unpaid unless a medical doctor familiar with the case indicates that the teacher has a continuing disability who's unable to work. Parental leave for non-birth giving parents doubled from 15 days to 30 days using their sick days. And these days, these days do not need to be used consecutively. They can be used within 1 calendar year of the birth, adoption, foster placement, and if the use of these days require 10 or more consecutive days of leave, the leave application provisions outlined in Article 17 will be in effect. All right, and then our last section, first year of life, which there is a lot of overlap here, obviously with the postpartum piece. But the problem that we're trying to solve is that under our current system, new parents have used up many of their sick days in the first weeks of their baby's life. In the first year of life alone, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 8 visits to the pediatrician just for well child checkups. Infant and toddlers catch colds and other minor illnesses easily and often require additional doctor visits and increased parental supervision at home as they recover. Parents need access to paid sick leave in order to keep their families healthy and to remain healthy themselves. Children whose parents have paid sick leave are more likely to access preventative healthcare services such as immunizations and well visits. So here's some more information from our members. So 1 in 10 babies in the US are born prematurely, and the same proportion require time in the NICU. These children often need follow-up surgeries, ultrasounds, and therapies like speech therapy to avoid developmental delays. My twins needed all of this and more. I used 9.5 sick days in the first year of life just to get them to appointments. Another one is I don't have family nearby or the means to pay for childcare. My department chair was supportive and helped schedule me for, oh wait, did I change this a little bit?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, all right. So I think I was trying to cut it down. I was able to teach 4 consecutive periods, including 0 periods. So my husband could stay home with our daughter in the mornings and work later in the day. I had no breaks during the day to pump, so I pumped in the car during my commutes. I picked up parts. It's okay. I picked up a part-time job after school, driving other families' children to activities with my own infant daughter in the car seat behind me just to make ends meet. Somebody else shared that they often felt stuck between doing what they needed for their family and not wanting to ruffle feathers with people that that they'd have to keep working with. And then this last one, because of complications during labor, I was dealing with incontinence and was not medically cleared to return to work. I wasn't sure when I'd be able to return, so I was advised to take a few weeks at a time rather than a leave of absence. In the end, I ended up using all of my 100+ sick days and was ultimately unable to return to work that year. Also, my elementary classroom went through multiple substitutes that year, and it was a mess for all students. 2 years later, I haven't been able to build back up my sick days, which have been depleted from needing to take off when my son is sick. So here's the solution that we're hoping. Teachers who have returned to work after exhausting their benefit days by taking parental leave will have automatic access to the sick bank as needed for up to 365 days after the birth of a child, adoption of a child, or placement of a foster child. These days can be used to care for their own medical needs or the medical needs of their child. These teachers will not be required to submit medical documentation for these actions. So in conclusion, teacher working conditions are student learning conditions. Our students deserve well-rested and well-supported teachers, even when we're doing double duty as teachers and parents. More supportive family leave benefits will not only help us grow healthy families, they will also help increase teacher retention and benefit all our students.
Thank you, Molly. So that is the presentation of why more supportive parental leave is really, really important. We basically rewrote Article 16 and 17 to make how we work with leaves a little bit more clear, the expectations. So if you're looking on page 21, Article 16A 1 through 5 is a lot of blue, but it's just what we do. These are the expectations for what is the difference between when is it a short-term leave versus when is it a longer leave? How long do you have to be out before we apply for it formally versus informally? What are the expectations around substitute plans? So Article 16A is just codifying, this is what we do and this is how we do it. There are no changes here in what we're asking. Once we get into, we then separate it out to short-term leaves, then going into extended leaves is a different part. So for sick leave, we did not make significant changes to, didn't make changes to what we do, just made things a little bit more clear linguistically. So for what we had, family sick, family illness, personal illness, we're just calling them sick days, right? That you use sick days when you or your family are sick. Putting in here what already existed somewhere else, that you give a day to the sick bank each year. At the end of the year, any remaining unused sick days will roll over. We do that, but it was never actually written. And then on page 22, that is the significant change of new language. Molly presented each of these in our presentation along with the reasons for why. But what we were trying to do, we did a lot of research into the New York State paid family leave program, and really weighed a lot of the pros and cons of that program and really looked into that. And the big difference between what we do and what other employers do is our need for substitute teachers. So knowing that substitute teachers and the district needing to pay substitute teachers for the work that they do, we rethought treating us like public employees and instead said, you know what? We have lots of sick days and we have a sick bank. And we know that this is important enough to our members to be able to use. People would love to not use their sick days to take care of their babies, but that's not the system that we're working in. And using that sick bank and relying on that sick bank to help support these families is in keeping with the collective benefit that our members are interested in. We really want to use those days to support one another. So the only new thing that we are asking for is those 6 additional prenatal care days, which is in keeping with where the state is going for private employers, and then the ability to use more sick time than we are currently using. Always exhausting our own personal sick time and own personal benefit time before we dip into the bank. But then for us to also be able to use the bank to support people, because this is a time that people need to be supported. In order to help make sure that we continue to have a robust teacher sick bank, we did put in a line that teachers, when they retire, be able to donate any number of accumulated sick days that they wish to the bank. We have a lot of people who retire with many, many, many sick days. They get a buyback on some of those, but then there are a lot of sick days that just kind of go somewhere. We would like them to go into the sick bank to help cover people when they have babies. That has the piece also about being able to access the sick bank for the first year of your child's life, once provided you return. So that isn't people who stay out on unpaid childcare leave, they don't get that extra year. But for the people who come back after 12 weeks, being able to, know that their kids are going to get sick, know that they're going to have to take some doctor's appointments, being able to give them access to the sick bank just to alleviate that worry for them is in keeping with that. The rest of the leave provision, because we're talking about leave provisions in general, is personal leave. We just changed the language to make sure that we call them personal days. If we're calling them sick days, we've got personal days, makes it a little bit more clear. We currently do not have any bereavement days in our contract, which is something that I'm frequently reminded of in intense moments of people's lives. We currently use our sick days to cover bereavement. We're asking for 3 bereavement days, but that those days not roll over. So if you have a year where you do not use bereavement days, great, you didn't have to use bereavement days, but that each year you could take up to 3 days for bereavement. Professional days, we currently have visitation days, which are 2 professional days per academic year for the purpose of observing other programs either in the district or out. we are proposing to expand the reasons that folks could use those 2 days. Some days you just need to catch up on professional duties. Some days you're a sped teacher who found out on Friday that you have 3 special ed meetings that need reports on Tuesday. Being able to take a professional day on Monday could get those reports done. So looking at the ways that we can use those professional days to take care of those professional duties that are not directly teaching. We currently offer days to mentors and their mentees through our mentoring program. Article H would just put that into our contract. We do currently have language in I about association business and how our union members who represent members in meetings can be released. We just wanted to put in that if they are called to meetings, so when you say if you are a building rep who gets called to a building level meeting to represent a member, that release from whatever it is would be protected. And when possible, all efforts will be made to schedule such meetings to reduce disruptions to teaching schedules of all members involved. So recognizing that it shouldn't happen, but when it does, it should be protected. And then Article 17 is similar to the beginning of 16. It just outlines what we already do. When is it a long-term leave? What are your expectations for substitute plans? Things, what are your expectations for, and the process for communication? So lots and lots of text. The major change is the parental leave support.
Wow.
Yeah.
Need to process.
I was gonna say, we'd be happy to take a break.
Well, quick question for me, and I have to be this person tonight. With my understanding of how reserve accounts will work, actuaries, how they question and quiz us, and liabilities that we have to consider on our end when we put together budgets and forecast things out. Have you talked to anyone? I mean, we're talking potential for hundreds of additional days that we would have to in some way plan for or to put on the books as a liability. Has anyone put a dollar amount on these requests or talked about that?
No, I don't know. We don't, I have not anticipated who's getting pregnant when to be able to give that information to you.
That's not my question. That's the. And I wish I had a technical auditor at the table. Maybe Bob, you help me with this, because this does come at something, we would have to adjust some books to add any day. Not to mention hundreds of days.
Right.
But
I mean, right now, sick leave that is not at retirement, that is not paid out, and there's a cap on the amount donated to ITA. We project in budgetary items how much that's going to cost over time, right? Some of those days do disappear at no cost to the employee. He or she hasn't used them. They were provided to use for sickness. They thankfully weren't sick. They disappear. That's already been budgeted. It's been baked into the budgets moving forward. So if we were to expand the opportunity for retirees to push a lot more days into the sick bank, we have to expand the amount that we're budgeting over time for those days, recognizing that many of them will be used with the expansion of this. So there's a cost to that. We
thank you, Bob.
would have to do.
Again, I answer to a board and they're fiduciaries. They will ask for a number. What type of liability are you assuming with this kind of concession, if you wanted to call it that? And I will need to, in some way, quantify it.
We have not done the budget work on it.
We will. All
Okay.
right.
That sounds like more your job than mine.
Any other time, yeah, that sounds great. I want that. It would help my family. I just hope when people hear us asking these questions, they need to know I am having to answer to a fiduciary who needs to know that number. And then we're going to be audited. And that number is something we have to account for and we're building budget for. And if it was easy as just saying, yes, it's a good thing and everyone should have it, which is what I feel, I would have already done it. But I need that number. And we will come back with some initial thinking about what, we just had a conversation about reserve funds at one of our last board meetings. And we had to say to our board, we're underfunded in various reserves, including our sick leave.
It'd be, yeah, part of that block.
Right. As we talk about reserve funds in here. There are reserve funds that are underfunded as our organization, and this would we would have to do more in those reserve funds. But anyway, I think it's time for a break. I'm sorry to talk too much, but I did have to ask that question.
Okay, So just to be clear, so far tonight, we have paused on secondary department leaders, family leave, salary, the whole leave of absence piece. Can we anticipate talking about, what can we anticipate coming back to talk
Say those options, what do we have?
about? Department leaders, family leave, salary. We're waiting for Meg to get here to talk about librarians. And we,
I think librarians, and that's it. Those other ones are gonna require some significant conversation with our building leaders and our connection with healthcare and other
Okay.
folks. And I don't think we're gonna be able to get them on the phone tonight. Yeah.
and AI outsourcing. So while you caucus and while you process, think about AI outsourcing
thinking
in
about
Project
a lot.
2025.
The other item that gave me a little pause on the sick leave is that teachers returning from parental, that we call it parental leave, would not have to, would not be required to submit medical documentation. That would be treating members differently because other members who access a sick leave bank have to provide some medical documentation. I'm not saying it has to be a 1-for-1, but maybe just be thinking about how we treat people similarly that are seeking benefits from that sick bank. I'm not saying it's an exact like
Yeah, no, I'm just trying, I'm thinking, are you thinking less documentation or more documentation?
or just it's right now it would, if we agree to what is proposed, it would require no documentation. But for instance, if you're taking your newborn to the doctor, it would be easy to get, like I was at the doctor today, for example. Am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, I mean, if you were to feel it was necessary that every time you take your newborn, your first year of life child and get a doctor's note every time you take them to the doctor, then
I've
it just seems like a bunch of paper. Like if we know that babies get sick in their first year of life and that
Yeah.
they go to the doctors all the time.
But we also know some teachers who are utilizing the sick leave bank that they have long-term illnesses and we do
Right.
require them to update us, I think in
Yeah, every
language every 30 days, which sometimes
Well,
I'm like,
it's
I don't need an
every-
update. I can tell that they're really
It's everything
sick.
is at district request.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to put, will not be required to submit medical documentation for these absences unless requested by human resources or something like that.
And yeah, that's something like that. And then also be thinking about how many days under number 8, how many days
That,
are you seeking?
that
to-
sounds like as you figure out the budgeting of how this would work, that sounds like the type of thing that might come back in a counter proposal from you on that. We're open, we're open to feedback and the negotiation of
So what we thought,
it.
Meg will be here at 6.
Yeah, Meg said she'll be here at 6.
We'll reconvene at 6.
Okay, sounds good.
Mary, you know how to send me a message if you need more.
Yep. We have one more proposal tonight. It is a revisit. So proposal 50, the scheduling of teacher librarians. We took the prior conversation that we had and made some revisions based on that prior conversation. So one of the revisions is in 11T1 that we walked back the requirement of staffing to all efforts will be made to ensure that each school building maintains a teacher librarian. In number 2, it was a little unclear of who the mutual agreement was being sought with for the scheduling. So mutual agreement of the building leader and the staff, since we already have staff involved in collaborative decision-making of schedules. We walked back the duty-free minutes to handle the administrative responsibilities of the library to 30 minutes daily instead of, we had it at 40. And then 4, the librarians will not be assigned to supervisory duties or teaching assignments outside of the library or the library tenure area without mutual agreement of the librarian. and we can answer questions and Meg can give insight on anything that you need to know more about the special work with teacher librarians.
I don't have questions. I think my concern and reservations are the same. This would be unique from my perspective to any other position in your bargaining. And that's where I was having the most issues. And that's why I believe we rejected the last time. While you clarify some language, it still is specific to a position in ways that we don't have in other places. And I would not be in favor of that.
So I think it's important to keep in mind that this is an incredibly unique position that does not fall into the traditional scope of classroom teaching. So like I've said, our contract is very clearly written with classroom teachers in mind, specifically classroom teachers on a period schedule. So Meg, can you speak a little bit to like what the day for a teacher librarian looks like at this point compared to a classroom teacher?
All right, so, our day our day starts off with our 20 minutes we're supposed to have free from other duties as school social workers and psychologists. We're supposed to start the day opening the library and making sure it's available so that we can help out subs who need loaner Chromebooks, help with student Chromebooks, kids come in and check out books, teachers need help with equipment, subs need help with equipment. The first minutes of our day are usually taken up making sure that classrooms can function for the day with the resources that they need. Then we have instruction. So I have instruction, several classes, sometimes they're back to back. I think I actually have an example of a day I can run through. But we do cataloging and adding books, checking out books, recommending books to kids. We have various programs that we run that are specific to our schools as well. But yeah, our schedule is full from the beginning to the end of the day, and we try and make sure we have our lunch and prep. But usually when it comes to ordering books, organizing and cataloging, organizing databases, a lot of times I'll even take piles of books home with stickers so I can add them to the catalog when I'm at home. Because the administrative work that we need to do in order for a library to function, for someone to come in and be able to get that Chromebook, or for a kid to be able to get that new book because the book order came in, or being able to provide supplies for the school, those things cannot happen during the day because our prep period is for preparing for instruction, and that's what we're using it for. The other administrative needs that have to happen for our school and library to function happen outside of the school day.
Thank you. Please hear me when I say that my hesitations around this thing are philosophical and ideological, not in any way connected to this particular position even. You said it best, Catherine. Outside of the classroom teacher, this position is unique, but outside of the classroom teacher, there are many unique positions. And as you described your role, I could say similar things about physical education teachers, music teachers. If we want to go down this path about individual roles that are unique outside of the classroom position, then that's a different conversation. So I'm trying to process. It's not about the librarian from my perspective. And I'm not wishing to entertain language or proposal that's specific to one role outside of the classroom teacher.
Well, so we are working on proposals that relate to related service providers. A school may have one psychologist, but the work that they do is similar enough to the social workers, to the counselors, that we can put them under an umbrella and work on some language that protects that group. Our specialists, because of the rotational schedules, already have some of those pieces covered by their work. This is truly a unique position. There is not a category that we can put them with because they don't fall under this. They don't have, our teacher librarians don't have the same needs as our classroom teachers. They don't have the same needs as our inclusion assignments, which we just created language for inclusion assignments and common planning time. They don't have the same needs as our RSPs. So we have already in our conversations established that we are having conversations about the ways different types of work needs a little bit of different language to be able to really protect it. If we had other people who had work comparable to teacher librarians, we would have put them in here as a category. But because we don't have anyone with work comparable, what we are really trying to get them is to make sure that they have enough time to work while at work. And one of the things that you brought up last time was the level of comfort of other members. Like, would this be comparative? Would other members be comparing themselves to librarians? And what did the librarians get? But 95% of our members felt that this was an important enough proposal to bring to the table because 95% of our members felt that the librarians needed special language because their work is so unique and specialized that they felt that that was needed. Also, last time you said that you were going to speak to some of our building leaders about this and that was the hesitation. So you did mention that yes, it is unique and that makes you nervous, but you were going to speak to some of the building leaders about it. And that was what the whole.
Yeah, one more time. 1, 2, and 4 are very different and unique even to the positions that you referenced earlier. Speaking about maintaining a particular level of staffing, that's unique. The mutual agreement on schedules in the ways in which it's listed here is significantly unique, if I can use those two terms together. Supervisory duties in the ways in which it's listed here is very different.
But we already have language about supervisory duties for itinerant teachers and certain specialists. That's already in the contract.
Yeah, I've shared with you my hesitations here on this one.
What would it take to get you to protecting the professional needs, specifically looking at 3?
Anybody else have some thoughts here? Any thoughts on this one?
I mean, I've definitely worked with libraries before. When you say protecting the professional needs, they get a duty-free lunch period in theory, right? Already, right?
In theory.
Yes, but that's it.
No, I'm just asking.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do, but
Okay.
it's preparation for instruction. And I have to push back a little bit and say that it's not unprecedented because we do have department heads who have release time and also a stipend for developing budgets and supply lists, which is something that we do, right? And we do have stipends traditionally and time for like speech pathologists to do RS logs. So I can't say that it's completely unprecedented and we're not asking for a stipend. We're just asking for time.
Yeah,
And
no,
I think also the
which is-
lunch piece, though, I think is important to know that in very few schools do our librarians have a lunch period that's not also during a student lunch period when the library is open for students to come to it. And because we keep library clerks in our libraries rather than aides or TAs, that other adult in the library cannot supervise children, which means that the librarian doesn't actually get to leave the library for their lunch period. So our librarians generally, their 30-minute lunch is not duty-free. Their prep period is not duty-free. And they're trying to manage the administrative tasks of a library during the school day when kids are in and out. So it's like from the moment that school is open until the moment that school is closed, there is never a time where students might not be in the library. And the librarians are the only people who can meet students' needs at that time, which means from 20 minutes before the start of the day until after school. These are people who don't actually functionally have a break because the logistics don't allow them to have a break.
Okay, so yes, I think we agree that there's a lot of things going on in the library. The question I was just asking, is this like there's in the contract, a librarian is granted a duty-free lunch in the contract already?
All
correct?
teachers are
Yes.
granted a duty-free lunch.
right.
yes.
So- so-
And a prep period.
Yes, same thing with the prep period. So really what you're asking for is an additional 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm just trying to get clarity on that piece. And then just trying to think about how that would impact our schedules and the function in our building. So,
And staffing, it wouldn't,
And
it
staffing.
impact staffing.
because as you noted, libraries are very busy places, and so there's going to be some implications there. That was the only question.
And those were my original hesitations. And I may not have been clear. Agreeing to 1 and 2, 3 and 4 would have staffing and financial implications.
So like I said, 95% of our members feel that having language that protects the work and sets boundaries on the work for our teacher librarians is necessary. We rely so heavily on our teacher librarians to support us. This is our collective way of supporting them.
I appreciate your advocacy and the work again. And our questions are coming from the staffing associated with it and memorializing that staffing requirement in the contract in ways that we haven't done for other positions.
If I were managing the ESP contract, I'd be promoting an aide in library.
I knew that was coming. I heard that. in
Right,
your-
but that's not my
You were
contract.
leading to that. That's another conversation, a different conversation.
Right, but that's not.
Than the one we're having right here.
Yeah,
So let me be clear, just so, because this has come back a few times. At this point, and I hate using the word because I know it's a tough word, we're rejecting this for the reasons that we have noted, particularly around the staffing requirements that we will be memorializing into the contract.
okay, I hear you. And your rejection, we are not withdrawing it. We want to see where salary shakes out and maybe come back, maybe not.
Thank you.
So we have a few for next week. We do have a few proposals that have been undergoing some revisions. So we've got duty clarification for RSPs that Jake and Mary have been working on. You were working on collaborative master scheduling and ITA input for curricular development. And then we will be looking forward to bringing back unresolved conversations from tonight. Including all the ones that were unresolved.
We've got a plan.
Okay.
Thank you all.
And we are meeting next on the 5th of June. So we would ideally love any counter proposals or language for us to work with as a team by the 2nd.
All right.
Does that work?
Yeah. I may have a conflict on the 5th. I may miss it, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay. Well, our working agreements do just require
Yeah,
that Bob and I be here.
that's why I looked at
So, so we are comfortable with that.
I
if
don't
we
even
can.
miss it, but I got. Cool. Thank y'all.
Thank you.